Play guitar, Leadbelly. Leadbelly was the inspiration, and I'm still trying to figure out what he was doing after all this time. I still haven't quite gotten it, but that was the inspiration. It's still probably the most mysterious guitar player that I'm aware of. Leadbelly, the thing that I like about Leadbelly, I listened to him when I was a kid, and I would listen to those records, and I could picture these are the records that came out on Folkways, and I would picture Leadbelly sitting in my kitchen playing guitar, and I would picture myself right there with him, and listening to those records, it gave me the sense that that's where music was made, in people's houses, and the thing about Leadbelly that really influences what I do now is that those records, it was a mix of old and new songs. He did a lot of music for young people, but in a way, the music that he did for young people is kind of the template for everything that I've been trying to do, where it's the traditional tunes, it's some new songs, some songs that are sort of in the back parts of his brain. They come out the way he thinks they were. He's always reinterpreting things. And it was, sometimes it would move more for young people, and then sometimes more for older people. And I never got the sense that he considered his younger audience any less able to understand what was going on. There's so much mystery in that music. And I thought, when I started making, when my daughter, who's 15 now, was born, I went over to the Tower Records, no longer there, it was a long time ago. And I was looking for the updated version of the Leadbelly records that I listened to as a kid. I just thought that's the template for perfect all ages music, or family music. And instead of finding that, I think about Leadbelly or Woody Guthrie or Pete Seeger, Ella Jenkins, those people, it was the same thing. And it all sounded like it was recorded in somebody's house, and it drew on from a variety of cultures, and extremely artful and sophisticated, but it also sounded like driftwood and bent nails. It was just real homemade. And instead of finding the updated version of that, a lot of what I found was very corporate. It seemed like everything's either tied into a cartoon or a movie or something like that. And eventually I found a lot of great all ages music, but I didn't find the sound I heard in my head, which was, again, the updated version of those Folkways records. So that's, so the idea of what Leadbelly was doing stays with me, and that's always been what I've been trying to create when I go out to make this family music. So it's a constant, he's with me always. I like the way Bob Dylan plays guitar, and Gordon Lightfoot, and a guy from the Bahamas, Joseph Spence, great guitar player. But Pop Staples, probably the person that I'm most trying to be like, that I feel like his playing is within my grasp. Unlike Leadbelly's playing, I think Pop Staples, I can figure that out. So that's always what I'm moving towards. And also, I like to play electric guitar, which was never Leadbelly's thing, but Pop Staples is an electric guitar player. It's always a little different, trying to figure out how we're going to do things. But in the beginning, it was, I was interested in finding older songs that I could update, and I wanted. I wanted the people who heard them, especially young people, to be able to have some kind of an emotional attachment to it, but it couldn't be at the expense of the adult listeners. So, there's children's music out there, and that tends to be particular to the experience of children. And then there's adult music, which is probably most of what we all listen to. But in between songs about learning to eat with a fork, or putting on a pair of trousers, or learning to say please, these are things that young people are kind of, that's a big part of their world. So that's one end of the spectrum. And then the other end is songs that I would have sung when I was in a rock and roll band about old girlfriends or drinking, or fascinating themes like that, right? So between those two extremes, that's kind of where I live. So it's got to be, the tunes have to, they have to work for all ages all the time, but it could lean more towards adults and more towards young people, but nobody ever gets left behind. And if a song is good and easy to sing along with, that's a big plus, because when we perform, it's great to, it's great if it can be like a little Grateful Dead show. That's really sort of a goal for the live part, because we want everybody to be in it together. So singing, dancing, nobody has to sit still. But the more people sing along, the more it's like less like a concert and more like a show, or more like a party, I should say. You want to make it more like a party. Well, it seems like in the early '80s, the whole idea was to find yourself a label and be on it. And it seemed like when I was in a group called the Fuegos, and we had one label that we wanted to be on, and that was Slash Records. And that was where the Blasters and Los Lobos and X and Rank and File and the Violent Femmes, they were all on that label, and we just thought that was kind of the more high octane American music, and that's where we ended up. So there was a music industry. Now, I don't know. Now after making 5 records for other labels, I was completely convinced that when I started doing the family music, I decided at the very beginning that I would start my own label, because I had made 5 CDs for other labels and didn't own anything. I had no rights to any of the music, so other than the music publishing. So I thought, well, that doesn't seem right, does it? Why don't I just start my own label? And now the technology's changed, and you can really do it this way. So it's, I think the music industry may have killed itself in a way, but it makes incredible opportunities for the smaller operations. So my label, we've put out 10 CDs, and this is our 10th year. We've been going really strong for 10 years, and figuring out alternative ways to do it. And I couldn't imagine that I would still be able to keep going if I had signed with a label to do this family music. I don't think anyone would have hung in there for 10 CDs. It just doesn't happen that way anymore, except for a handful of people. But I like to think that maybe I'm in the toy industry rather than the music industry. What happened was when my daughter was born and I went looking for this sound I had in my head, I was working on a solo record. It was my first solo record after the Del Fuegos, and and it was the adult themes, old girlfriends and drinking, and I put that out right and while I was doing that, I hadn't been able to find this all ages music that I was looking for in the Tower Records, so I thought I would make it myself one fall and have it be. I would make a cassette that I could give out to families in the neighborhood just as a holiday present. Not holiday music, but it would be just handmade music for families. And so I made this cassette and gave it out to everybody. And what happened was no one cared about my solo record, but everybody wanted more copies of this cassette that I called it Rocket Ship Beach. And I really had fun making it. I made it in 3 weeks, and I just had a reel-to-reel 8-track, and it just turned out to be. And I thought, we were mostly updating folk songs and bringing in friends from the neighborhood who included West Indian babysitters that I had met. Sheryl Crow lived around the corner. Suzanne Vega came in to do a tune. Some guys that I met, we had a string band and we played. And so it's just that. It was just real homemade community fun. And people were way more interested in this cassette than they were in my expensive solo CD. And as much as I liked it, I felt like a useful member of society for the first time in a long time, because making pop music for me was always a very self-centered activity. It was always, what's in it for Dan? And I felt like making this family music, I had possibilities where I could actually, um, I could, I had something to give other people, and that I could be, I could be the guy who shows up with the guitar or the banjo and gets people singing along, and I could somehow, when you can do that, you get invited to a lot more parties, and that was, that wasn't lost on me, and I decided that I would stop pop music, and I would just move into family music and totally devote my time and energy to it, and it wasn't part of my big master plan, but it was certainly, when it kind of revealed itself, deciding to go into it was by far the best decision that I've made in my adult life. I don't know if I think of this as being educational. I feel if the minute I hear someone else tell me that what they're doing is educational, I'm not in. That's when my interest level plummets. So I feel like in my heart, I believe it is educational, but I would never say that because I'm an entertainer. I really am. I'm not an educator. But I do believe that, for me, my experience is that music is my window to the outside world, and it always has been through my entire life, and it still is. This is the beginning. For example, we made a CD called Nueva York, and it's all songs from different parts of Latin America, and we collaborated with a lot of our Latino friends around here in New York. And before beginning to make this CD, my knowledge of the different parts of Latin American culture, or the cultures of Latin America, my knowledge was so limited. But it was through the music, and then of course immediately after that is food, and then from there it gets, politics, geography, worldview, everything else unfolds from that. So, and I've always tried, in making our CDs, we've always tried to include the neighborhood as much as possible, and I think that I always try and think. I grew up in New Hampshire, and which is kind of a white monoculture. It's changed, it's certainly at that time it was, but it's changing a little bit, slowly, fortunately. But so I think about the kids that live in those parts of the country, and thinking about if they get one of my CDs and they listen to it and they hear people from different backgrounds coming together and making music and singing in different languages. There's always we always try to have an element of that, just because I think that we get an opportunity to create a little world here with these CDs, and the world is a joyous one, and communal music making is a joyous experience. So we really do try and, I may not think of these as being educational, but I definitely have an agenda. It's the reason that I'm so passionate about music, and the reason that I believe in music so much, is because this is for my entire life. Since I was 7 or 8 years old, music has been the most important thing to me, and it's gotten me through the good times and the bad times, and it's opened my eyes in a way that nothing else was able to. I know for other people, other art forms might do it, but for me it was always music. And I think that what I've noticed since I started making family music, what's become very clear to me is that America used to be an incredibly musical country as far as casual, communal, amateur music making. There used to be a lot of it. And since the advent of recorded music, in the last 100 years or so, what's really happened is that we've become very much consumers of music, and the music making has really dwindled. But I am optimistic, and I believe that electronic media, the very thing that turned us into consumers, or that we allowed to turn us into consumers, will also help us to become music makers again. It's so easy now to go online and get lessons, get guitar lessons, ukulele lessons, or to hear a song or get the chords to a song. All those things I used to have to go to the music store for. I would have to go down and look at the songbooks and try and write the chords down in my notebook and all that stuff. but now it's all right there. So I think it's gonna. I do think it's gonna turn around because I think we're hardwired to participate in music making, and that's been, you know, probably preceded language. You know, I think singing and music making was probably our original form of communication. So it's an essential part of being a human, and the thing is that it's, you know, what I also, I mean, that the other thing is that it is an incredibly joyous experience, and why leave that to the professionals? I mean, I love my job, but really this is something we could all be doing. It was a little weird at first when Josh Golden, the writer and director, contacted me. He didn't say a lot about it. He said it had to do with a children's singer. But then as I was reading the script, there was nothing about this guy that I could identify with. He was bitter. He felt like the music industry had totally let him down, and he wasn't very nice to people. And, you know, just everything that I feel like I am to some degree. I'm very optimistic. I believe in all of life's best possibilities. You know, so all these things. So as I read it, I thought, well, clearly this has nothing to do with me. But at the end, you know, the thing that was hip about it for me was at the end of the movie, there's some kind of redemption, and there's a real fundamental shift in the way that the guy sees the world, and it ends where he's singing and playing guitar, and I think that that's where a lot of that comes from. You know, I really believe that in music making that we begin to have, that our whole perception of ourselves and the world around us can change, and especially in music making with other people in a social setting. So I was really into that part of it. But even though the guy was bitter and negative and everything else, I love Matthew Broderick, and I knew it was going to be good, and I was relieved to find out that it really had nothing to do with me as a person. Working on Wonderful World is very exotic for me. Exotic, because I've been making records and touring for so long. So to get to be around any kind of movie making is good. I think most musicians, I think all singers feel like they can be actors, and I didn't really get the chance to do much more than a couple lines in the movie. But to make some instrumental music and to write some songs for it and be on the set and watch it all happen was it was a great experience. And I loved the movie, and I loved the script. So it was a real easy one for me, and hopefully something that I'll get to do more of. But and also when the movie was being made, it was very uncertain whether it would ever get picked up or where it was all going to go. And to see that it's gotten picked up, it's being distributed, it's opening in cities around the country and getting great press, it's really, that part of it is exciting. So it's nice to see all the work that goes into something, and then it pays off, and it just sort of makes you believe that these things really are possible. No, there's nothing about being in a rock and roll band that I miss at all. It was really fun, and I felt, you know, I'm really lucky that I was able to do that, because everybody that I knew wanted to be doing exactly what we were doing. So, and there were plenty of bands that were better than we were, but we got some really lucky breaks. But everything that I liked about playing in a rock and roll band, the sense of community that we had in the beginning in Boston, the feeling that you could wake up and write a song and be playing it that night at a show if you wanted to, just the feeling that anything was possible musically, just that open-ended part of it, all that stuff, and the energy of, you know, for us, when in the Del Fuegos time, we didn't even think it was a show if people weren't dancing. You know, people had to dance for it to have any meaning to us at all. And that's still the case, man. You know, it's so, you know, and that was really one of the best things about it. So all the things that I liked about rock and roll, the energy of it and the participation from people in the audience and just the completely open-ended musical aspect of it, all that stuff is alive and well in my life every day. So all the great things are there, and then all the sort of the more negative sides of it all. The unhealthy lifestyle, terrible hours, questionable associates. All of that stuff is not there anymore, and now it's really hard to imagine shows or gatherings without young people around. They're very inspiring. They're inspiring on the dance floor. They're inspiring the way they'll sing, even if they don't know the words. They just set a good tone. So I love having young people and adults together. And we even get teenagers at our shows, so that's the ultimate crossover. And so there's really nothing that I miss. I feel like I have it all now. Well, I know when the reason I feel so lucky about being able to make family music now is because when I was wasting my youth in a rock and roll band, we were able to make, we made 4 records and toured around the US and Europe and got to meet our heroes and do all that stuff. And every day was an opportunity for new mistakes. And I feel like we just made them all. So people could have been giving us good or bad career advice, and we wouldn't have known it. We were just so self-willed, so willful about what we were going to do and how we were going to do it, and we just, we were just constantly shooting ourselves in the feet. And but then when I started the family music, I felt like I had an opportunity to do things differently. But a lot of the advice that I did get was, oh, you'll never get distribution. You got to go with a major label. Don't try and start this yourself. A lot of people really weren't too supportive of it, and so I'm really sorry. Excuse me. A lot of people weren't supportive of my starting a label and having a go of it. The feeling at that time 10 years ago was you really need to work with a larger company, and so I guess that was, I don't know if it was bad advice, but fortunately for me, it's worked out really well that I've been able to start a company and be independent, and I'm surrounded by great people. I'm not running the company, but I'm surrounded by great people that are doing it.